Hello everyone and welcome back to your next lesson all about Ielts Writing Task 1. Today we will learn how to organise and structure your writing into 4 simple parts. Here are your lesson notes. Firstly, you'll need to know how to write an organised Ielts Task 1 report in 4 steps. And you'll also understand what to write in each of the 4 steps. But before moving on, I'd like to review some key information from the last few lessons. To recap, there are 6 pieces of visual information or different questions that you might see on Ielts Writing Task 1. That could be different kind of charts, maps or processes, which are actually like diagrams. There is a suggested word count of 150 plus words. Any less and your score will receive a penalty, though you don't get more marks for writing more than 150 words. You have a recommended time limit of 20 minutes to complete this task. And the task is to report the key features in the visual information that is presented to you. That rounds up just a few important things we know about Ielts Writing Task 1. And before we move on to our 4 steps, it might be worth asking, why do I need to structure my report? And to answer that, we'll go back to the band descriptors. In the Band 7 Task Achievement Band Descriptor, it states, presents a clear overview of main trends, differences or stages, and an overview is included in the 4-step structure that I will teach you in this lesson. And the Band 7 Coherence and Cohesion descriptor states, the student logically organises information and ideas. There is a clear progression throughout. By using the 4-step structure, you can cross off these 2 points on the band descriptors, so it's very important to use it. Okay, so here is the 4-step sequence. We begin with an introduction and then move to the overview, which I mentioned is in the band descriptors. In previous lessons, I mentioned splitting the visual information into 2 groups. Here you can see we have 2 detailed paragraphs, and this is where you can talk about the 2 groups of data from the question. I would highly suggest pausing the video at this point in the lesson and writing the 4 steps down. Now I'm going to go into each of the steps and explain in a lot more detail what you need to write and how you can do it. So let's move on to the introduction step. Here is a task 1 question. The bar chart shows the number of students attending 3 different courses from 2001 to 2004. Summarize the information by selecting and reporting the main features and make comparisons where relevant. On the vertical y-axis, we have students in millions, and on the bottom x-axis, we have the 4 different years. To the right of the bar graph, there is a key which gives us the 3 different courses. To write our introduction, we will need to paraphrase the question, which simply means to write it again, but to use our own words. However, that does not mean that we have to change every single word. Let me show you my example of how I paraphrase the question. The bar chart illustrates the total number of students enrolled into 3 different courses between 2001 to 2004. As you can see, I haven't made huge changes to the question, and I've used my understanding of synonyms, words that have the same meaning, to reword and paraphrase the question. Instead of the bar chart shows, I've used the bar chart illustrates. The number of students has been changed to the total number of students. And I've used the synonym for attending, which is enrolled. My final change was to swap from to between, which is a top tip and something that you can use often. I do recommend that your introduction is no longer than 2 sentences, but don't go into too much detail. And remember to simply paraphrase the question and use synonyms to change the language. Let me show you a few more examples that you could use, and it might be worth noting these down so you can practice using them. The graph, chart, table, or map illustrates, gives information, depicts, shows, represents, or compares and shows. You'll notice the last phrase is in red, and that's because if there's more than 2 charts, you can swap between compares and shows in your paraphrased introduction. You may have noticed that I haven't mentioned process diagrams, and there's a key phrase I want to teach you in this lesson. The diagrams illustrate the way in which the product is produced. The product could be a wide variety of things, but whatever the process diagram shows to produce, you can put that there. Now the key phrase here is the way in which. It's a very versatile phrase and can be used when describing many different kinds of process diagrams, so have a go at using it too. Before we move on to our overview, I have an introduction challenge. Using either a notepad and pen or the Q&A section, I want you to write your own introduction for the question on this slide. Don't copy my example too closely. In the Q&A section, you could get feedback from other students, and I can read it too, so that might be a good place to post your answer. Moving on to our next step, which is the overview. The first thing that we need to understand about the overview is that to score a Band 6, you must include one. The Band 6 task achievement descriptor states, presents an overview with information appropriately selected. And to score a Band 7 in task achievement, the descriptor states this, presents a clear overview of main trends, differences, or stages. So as we can see, it's very important that we include an overview in our report. But what exactly is an overview? Let's take a look at that now. Firstly, your overview should not contain a lot of specific figures and detail. However, the overview should report the main trends, or if you like, the big picture of the visual information given to you. Instead of saying car sales rose by 20%, you would simply say car sales increased. Give the big picture without figures. As I previously said, if you want to score above a Band 6 in task achievement, your report must include an overview. And to score Band 7 or higher, you must identify the main trends, differences, or stages. Let's see some examples now. The line graph shows the percentage of recycling rates in 3 countries, and it's recorded across 6 years. Can you identify 3 general main trends in this graph? And by that, I don't mean specific figures, just the overall picture. What could you briefly say about each country? And are there any similarities that you could quickly discuss? Pause the video now and in note form, so not full sentences, try and identify 3 general trends in the line graph show, and then I'll show you my ideas. In the last lesson, you may remember I showed you some planning notes. Well, here they are, and it also gives me the information for my overview. Looking at my notes, can you work out what I might write in my overview? The first thing to note is that I've grouped the UK and Germany together because their recycling rates follow a very similar trend. France, however, has a completely different set of data, so I would put that in group 2 and write about it in my second detailed paragraph. The main trends I identified for my overview are that the UK and Germany have a steady, consistent increase, whereas France has a slow downturn with a final rise. Let's see how that would look in a fully explained overview. Overall, the recycling rates of the UK and Germany rose steadily and consistently over the 6 years. However, the percentage of waste recycled in France experienced a downward trend. A few key points to mention would be, I've highlighted overall as I believe that is a key piece of vocabulary that you should start your overviews with, and do remember the comma. You can see that I haven't mentioned any specific figures or percentage increases in my overview and have just stuck to the main facts or the bigger picture. For now, don't worry too much about specific vocabulary. That will come in the next lesson. Here is a quick review of the 4-step report structure. We've completed our introduction and we've just looked at how to make an overview. Now it's time to take a look at what is in a detailed paragraph and how we can write one. I'd quickly like to return to the task 1 question, which will remain the same every time. Summarize the information by selecting and reporting the main features and make comparisons where relevant. The majority of our answers to this question will be in our 2 detailed paragraphs, and that's where we'll be reporting the main trends, differences and similarities, so they are very important. But what do we need to include? In the detailed paragraph, you have to report the key features of the data shown to you, and this must be done accurately or you risk losing marks. It's worthwhile in the body paragraph to give specific figures and to reference the visual information shown. You also need to logically organize your writing, and that's where splitting the data into 2 groups is very useful. Now we'll look at 3 examples of body paragraphs, starting with charts and graphs. These 2 pie charts show the contribution to the economy of Turkey, split into 8 different sectors. I've decided to split into 2 groups by the sectors that increased and the sectors that decreased or stayed the same. This means I can write a paragraph for each of my 2 groups. Here is my first detailed paragraph where I'll report on group 1. Please do pause the video and read through this detailed paragraph. You may notice that I'm going to describe all 8 sectors, but it's worth remembering that often you don't have to describe every single piece of data. Here is example 2, and we're going to be looking at the body or detailed paragraph for this map here. It might be good practice for you to look at this map and ask yourself the 4 key questions from the last lesson. I can see the map is comparing the key features of a town called Stopeford in the year 1930 and 2010. Let's take a look at the detailed paragraph I wrote for this piece of visual information. I have split this map into 2 groups, east and west of the main central road. Let's see my answer for the first detailed paragraph, or any developments made east of the main road. You may notice there is one part of the town east of the main central road that I haven't mentioned in my detailed paragraph, and it actually remained unchanged. Can you see what I haven't discussed? You can post your answers in the Q&A section. Now on to our final example, which is all about detailed paragraphs for processes. The diagram here shows us the process of creating or manufacturing bricks, which are often used in construction. Now let's see how I grouped my data and also take a deeper look at my detailed paragraph. For the process of brick manufacturing, I simply split the diagram into the first 3 steps, and the second group was the 4 last steps. Pause the video and read through this detailed paragraph. You can see I've gone into quite some detail to explain each of the stages, and that's also a key word. Remember, for processes, we simply describe each of the stages in the diagram. That brings us to the end of this lesson, all about structuring and organizing our answer. I think you'll agree there was a lot of information and it was really packed. Please review your lesson notes, and if you have any questions, use the Q&A feature. Also, I would recommend maybe going through parts of this lesson again, and remember to take notes. All the best, and I'll see you in the next lesson.